My guest in the Nimataion today is Judika Illes, and together we are spinning a yarn. Judika, you're cartomancer, an occultist, author, editor. You write about magic and the paranormal, and today you're telling us about stories. Welcome.
Yeah, I love stories. I'm so happy to be here. It's the magical art of storytelling. People don't realize how magical it is. It is a
Absolutely.
magical art,
Yes,
as
totally.
valid as any other.
Absolutely. So, what has been your favorite childhood story?
My favorite story, and it is a profound story, and it's still it's a very mysterious story. So I still think about it, and I still see new things in it. It is from the Brothers Grimm, The Goose Girl. The
Hmm.
Goose Girl. Do you know it? The
Yes.
Goose Girl? Yes, you know it.
Yeah.
Um, I don't. It's not the most obscure story. It's not Hans my Hedgehog, but it is also not Hansel and Gretel.
Mm.
So, should I maybe recap a little bit?
Yes, please, for listeners who
For
don't
those,
know it.
you should read it yourself, and I will not spoil the story by telling you the whole thing. But it is an extremely magical, mysterious story with they've done studies that fairy tales go back thousands of years, the
Mm.
roots of these stories, and I think this is one of them. There are all sorts of shamanic elements to it. In the story, there is a princess whose father has died and whose mother has arranged, the queen, has arranged a marriage for her. And she is sent off to her future husband, a prince's home. Before she goes, her mother gives her a handkerchief in which the mother, the queen, has dropped 3 drops of her own blood on it, and she tells her this will protect you. But the princess is naive, and maybe she's been sheltered or protected, and I don't think she understands the impact of what she's been given, which as we read it, we understand it's blood magic and ancestor magic and the power of a mother's love. So she goes off, and the story tells us that she's been sent with this huge dowry, all these riches, but somehow they seem to have gone separately because the young princess is goes on her own magical horse, and she's only accompanied by a maid. And the maid is apparently, why is this maid going with her? We don't know, because the maid does not love her. This is not like her childhood friend or her nanny. This is just somebody who's, you know, clearly resentful of her position. And now, as I read it, I reread it again last night just to be sure I had all the details. Uh, you know, I did not realize this as a child, but they described the maid. The maid is she's on an old horse. She's got bad clothing. We just saw, the funeral of Queen Elizabeth and all the pomp and circumstance. So why is this princess going? Why are they treating this maid so badly? But that's just something to think about. There are a lot of holes in the story that you can fill in. And as they're traveling, there is a reversal of fortune. The young girl is alone with this maid who is much smarter and sharper than she is and does not love her. And at some point she loses the handkerchief. And I will leave you to it's I will leave you to read. Let's just say there is a goose girl very prominently in the story.
Yeah, and her horse is very important as well.
Yes, the horses. I have read anthropologists' descriptions of the Greek goddess Demeter, who, in her earliest aspect, is a horse goddess.
Mm.
It's an oracular horse. It is a speaking horse,
Yeah, it
and it
has a
is also
name. It,
it has a name, Falada. It has a name, and it also it speaks while alive, and it speaks when it's dead.
yeah.
It's magic. I mean, I remember when I was a child, it just enthralled, because I heard it very, very young, and it enthralled me, the magic horse. This dead horse who sympathizes with you in your misfortune.
I was heartbroken about the prophecies of the by the dead horse.
Yeah,
I heard it when I was very young as well, and
yeah, me too.
uh,
Yeah.
it stayed with me until today.
It's a
It's
beautiful story.
yeah, with a very gruesome ending, and but it's satisfying.
Well, I mean, I think that is characteristic of the Grimm's brothers stories, which in in as the editions, there's several editions of the stories, because when they first collected those stories, they were not intended for children. They were, if anything, anthropological. And then as they became successful and the stories sold, the stories, if you look at the different editions, they edited the stories,
Mm,
and they become a little, less sexual,
yeah,
more violent.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, they're, they're it surprises people if you've only seen like a Disney version of these stories. They're
They,
they're
they
pretty
got
passionate.
yeah they got streamlined over time, but actually
Yeah,
they were very raw and sexual, as you say. Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, I mean, I much prefer. I mean, this is not Grimm's, but Little Red Riding Hood. I like the earlier versions.
Yeah.
Little Red and the Wolf are having more fun.
Definitely. So the Goose Girl, how did it impact you? Besides
You, you
enthralling
know,
you, what?
it is such a mysterious story, and it has elements that I loved and that fascinate me. And as I was telling you, I have a section about fairy tales in this book, and I don't write about that story, but I write about a lot of the motifs, the the things, because I think there's so much ancient and forbidden knowledge in these stories. They survive the witch trials, and there are all these little hidden things. The iron stove in the story, and the talking horse. And I think that I they attracted me because I was a child who was attracted to witchcraft. I came out of the womb craving witchcraft. So I think that was appealing to me on a subconscious level. And I think a lot of the appeal for the story for me is a lot of it was subconscious, but ultimately it is about finding your own power. It
Mm,
is about finding your own magic, because the the goose girl goes from being, I don't want to say she's stupid, but she doesn't see the dangers in front of her. She doesn't recognize danger, and she doesn't recognize protection. And by the end of the story, she's so powerful and so magical, and and very, very good. She's a very unspoiled and sort of righteous character. I She ends up she won't break a vow,
mm.
even though it's made under duress. And I think all the elements impressed me. But I think also for myself, it's about finding your power, and finding your power in a way that doesn't compromise you.
Very well said.
And,
Yeah.
beyond everything else, all the elements that are so interesting and attractive and give you food for thought. But if you want to break the story down to its core, to its essence, I think that's what it is. It is about that empowerment.
Mm, beautiful. It's an sort of an initiation into magical
Yes,
power. Yeah.
yes. I think of that story very much as an initiatory story. For whatever reason, and maybe her mother knew, because maybe she had a reason for giving her that handkerchief. For you could read it as an initiation. Um, that she has to go through all these experiences in order to it's almost alchemical
Mm.
to find, to find the gold within.
Yeah, yeah. Judika, that was very beautiful.
Ah,
Very. I like how we can nearly sense these old powers by
yeah,
connecting to their stories.
yeah,
Something in the
yeah.
room right now. That's
Do
yeah.
you know what I learned? When I was actually making sure I had the story right because I think about it a lot, but I haven't gone back and it's like in Lang's fairy tale book, and I mean there's a lot of it's available, but apparently there are modern renditions where the horse doesn't die.
How
Yeah,
could they? I mean,
well that's life. Terrible things happen.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
life. We unfortunately life sends us all sorts of lessons we didn't want.
yeah.
So,
There's this very important book by a child psychologist.
Bettelheim,
Yes,
right?
Bruno
Bruno
Bettelheim.
Bettelheim.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Kinder
Bettelheim.
brauchen Märchen in German, and
Yeah,
I don't know the title in English, but
I don't know either. I don't know either, but I read it a long time ago.
yeah, 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 yeah. And he argues that it's important
Yeah,
that these things happen,
yeah,
and children know the difference between um, metaphorical violence and real violence.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's especially sort of I find it a little obscene for this story because it contradicts the whole the the princess who becomes a goose girl who becomes a princess again. She has these experiences and she starts off very innocent, and she has these experiences and she becomes powerful and protective of herself in a way that she wasn't before. And I think if she hadn't had, I mean, if these bad experiences hadn't happened, maybe she'd still be tending the geese.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's
in particular for this story, it's that trauma. I mean, every time I read it, it's like Black Beauty. I can't read Black Beauty anymore because it's so sad. But um, I love horses, but that's a very important. If the horse doesn't die, then the prophecies aren't as magical.
no, no. They have to come from the other world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. Thank you so much for
Ah, thank you for having me. It was
sharing
fun.
this story. It's been an honor, a great pleasure.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I
It's an
hope
honor
to,
to be here.
yeah, hope to talk with you again soon.
Oh, I would love to. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judika. Have a great
Thank you.
day. The
You
world
too.
is magical.
Thank you.